It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Bob Brown, President, CEO, and Chairman of American Asphalt Company. It is believed that the owner of all businesses is actually God, so Bob believes that he has been entrusted to steward the people and assets at American Asphalt while he is here on Earth. Bob is the visionary of the business, looking for opportunities to grow the list of satisfied customers and also help the people grow who depend on the company for employment or economic benefit. He grew up in a family business and in 1986 purchased the assets of a small asset company that he grew from 5 employees to its current over 170 staff. Bob actively participates in the construction industry and in the communities in which he works and resides. He served as the president of the board of the Food Bank of South Jersey for 9 years and is a past chairman and current emeritus board member of the Associated Builders and Contractors of New Jersey. Bob also actively participates in Group C12, a Christian business owners group where we are both active members. In his spare time, Bob enjoys being a volunteer fireman. Bob Brown, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. And gosh, we spoke a couple of weeks ago. Goodness, as we record this now, we're almost to the end of September. I even lost count of the months. How many months have we been in this pandemic? 6 or 7 by last count. How are you holding up? How are your people? And importantly, how are you doing personally?
God has protected our people. We have 170 employees. We do not have anybody or haven't had anybody afflicted with COVID or a relative with COVID. We're an essential service, so we've been allowed to operate through this whole thing, and we're having our best year ever. So God is good.
God is good.
He is blessing. He's blessing himself, means it's his business. He's steering it the right way.
Well, and your expression of gratitude is so high, as you know, we all are fathers in one way or the other, and we know how good it is when we get the compliments and we have the gratitude shown to us. So I'm sure he's smiling down on us today. Well, I want to talk about your background, and let's talk about your family and your father and mother. Tell me about your early years, where you grew up, and what your early family life was like.
I grew up in South Jersey, sort of a suburb type of community. My parents were both Christians, so I was brought up going to Sunday school was the normal thing. And when I got to be a teenager, I participated in the UMYF group, and I sang in the choir. And to me, it was a social environment. My friends were there. I felt very at home at church. So I was given a great example early on by my parents of, being a Christian. Now, as a young person, that was sort of a Sunday activity and a Thursday night choir activity. It wasn't a 24/7 acknowledgement. I certainly wasn't mature enough at that point to
understand.
We have
to grow into that, right?
And that took a lifetime. That wasn't even a few years.
For you and me both, brother. Tell me about brothers and sisters. Were you an only child? What was your sibling life?
I had 2 brothers, one older, one younger. My younger brother passed away of a drug overdose at 39 years old.
Sorry to hear that.
He was a year younger than me. That was a difficult thing to watch. And my older brother's 4 years older. He's been a lifetime fire chief, just recently retired, and we're close.
That's awesome. And Dad, what kind of profession did he have? Mom, did she work outside the home?
Well, my mom did not work outside the home, and my parents got divorced when I was 9 years old.
Oh, okay.
So that was troubling, maybe maturing and splitting time between parents. And they each brought great value to my life. My mother, certainly a great loving example, encouraging, gave me a lot of self-confidence later in life. And my father was a very good businessman. So he was cheap. So growing up, he allowed enough money for us to exist, I guess, without any frills. But when I wanted to buy a new bike or a set of drums or anything, his answer was no. You got to earn it yourself. Early on in life, I, started doing anything I could do to raise money so I could stand on my own and not burden my mother with, supporting hobbies and the toys and the kind of stuff I wanted. But later on in life, my dad came full circle of showing me how to run a business and trusting me with the family business. And that's a life lesson that I could never have replaced. So they both brought value in different ways into my life.
Did you go back and forth as an early teenager, or did you spend most of your time with mom?
My mother was the custodial parent, so it was every other weekend and 2 weeks in the summer with my dad. And he moved on and remarried, and his wife had two
Another
sons,
family.
so they're my stepbrothers. So we were mostly with my mother. And once you get to be a teenager and you develop a social circle in sports, you don't want to go. It's like,
this is my
base. I want to go to the football game Saturday. And if I went to my dad's house, selfishly, he'd go golfing on Saturday, like he had custody. But what's the point? He's not even here. He's golfing. So me and my brothers were on our own to entertain ourselves. So it was just a life lesson.
Makes good sense. When did you come to Christ, and what role did he play in your upbringing?
Early on, and it was a group effort in church that the whole class, and I'm going to say I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old, something like that. We're taught that this was the thing to do. And we all went up and prayed and confessed and gave our lives to Christ. And at the time, I didn't know the meaning of that. It just sort of, that's what we did. So early on, there was an acknowledgement. And as I grew, I knew the difference between right and wrong, sin and not sin. I didn't understand that all of us are sinners, and everything we do that is a sin. There's like no levels of different kinds of sin. I didn't understand all that. I just did the best I could every day, and I thought I was a good person at heart. It was like I think I know the 10 Commandments, and I try to follow them to the best of my ability. But I certainly wasn't a perfect man, for sure.
And did you come back to the church later in your years? Maybe fast forward to that a couple of minutes.
I guess I never, as I got married and moved from one house to another, I always ended up with a church home. My first wife was a Catholic, so she would go with me to church occasionally, but she didn't think the Methodist church where I grew up was all that and then some. She, went back to her Catholic faith, and occasionally I'd go to Catholic church with her. So we were back and forth, but through my first marriage, most times she would stay home on Sunday morning and I would go to church by myself. So that was sort of the beginning of the break or wedge in the marriage. You can see we're not like aligned in faith and other things. So, and then once I went through a divorce in my early 40s, and that was in the mid 90s, I was on my knees in church asking God for direction. What am I doing? How does this work? Why is this happening?
Yeah. Gosh, great. Good story. Well, we'll get back to that point a little later in the podcast. Tell us about your early years again. Good student in school. Did you play a lot of sports, music, theater? What kind of things were you involved with, both academically and outside the classroom?
I guess I was semi-popular. I guess I wasn't the coolest kid in school. And in those days, there were different cliques and different groups, but I had a circle of friends. I wasn't able to play football. I wanted to play football, but I had braces put on my teeth in 8th grade. And when I went to 9th grade football, the coach says basically, you even with a mouth guard, you're going to get severely injured. You're going to get an elbow to the face, and your lips are going to be chopped liver, and you don't want to do this. So I stood down, and I did run and track, and so I was fast and I was athletic, but the call of money overcame the call of sports. So I ended up working part-time jobs early at 15 years old. I started working in a gas station pumping gas after school to earn money because I wanted to have a car and I wanted to have drums. And so music was definitely something that my younger brother and I shared, and we were into the rock and roll, the whole Beatles thing, and all
Cool.
that.
Did you have a band? Did you play in a
I
band?
did.
Yeah, awesome.
I wasn't going to talk about that, but yeah, we played many a basement and many a garage.
I love it. I love it.
Was,
Any paid gigs at all, or was it just
we
more
won.
for fun?
We played at a swim club, a local swim club. They had a
Uh,
dance, and they hired us and actually paid us. So we had
that's
a good
great.
time doing it.
I
And
love it.
my brother was an excellent musician. He could play almost any instrument, really, and he became a professional musician later on,
Wow.
which
Wow.
added to the drug culture
Yeah.
in his life. But
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
definitely had a lot more talent than I did. So I moved on into the business world early on in my late teens, and
Right.
music sort of took a third seat,
Back
fourth
seat.
seat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Any other entrepreneurial things you're involved with? Did you have the, ubiquitous paper route when you were younger, mowed the lawns locally, that kind of thing?
You got it. I had two different paper routes. We had a lawn cutting circuit, and we used my mother's lawnmower. So, low overhead. All we had to do was put gas in it and push it.
Right.
And, we could earn ourselves $20 a house to cut lawns. We shoveled snow in the winter. I had a wagon. I got, a block of ice, and would shave it down and add Kool-Aid to it and sell snow cones.
That's
and
great.
my mother supplied the ice and the Kool-Aid. I got to keep the money. So that was a great business model. 100% profit. All I had to do was pull that wagon and yell water ice as I walked up and down streets. So early on, I was trying to figure out ways that I could make money so I could, buy my mother a gift at Christmas, or buy my own bike, or do those kinds of things.
Now, you went to Rutgers, great New Jersey-based school. Was that kind of a preconceived decision? Did mom or dad go there, or was it just, the local available, and this is what you had your sights on?
I don't know if I'm smart or dumb about this, but it was a preconceived notion. My father picked up the tab and wanted me to go to college.
Wow.
I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to work and start my life. I thought I had it all going on at 18,
yeah.
And I wasn't a good student through high school. I did enough to get by. I didn't like school. I couldn't wait to get out and go to work. And it just, it did. Being a student didn't call to me. So I suffered through a year of Rutgers. The only classes I remember taking were psychology and accounting. The rest of it was sort of a blur to me.
Right.
And I worked for my dad and the family. They had an HVAC and fuel oil business. So I was able to go and be the dispatcher and work from, 3 to like 11 at night dispatching servicemen. And I could read and do my studies there. So it was a perfect combination. I could have a job and earn and go to school. But after 1 year of college, I was rammy. I was turning 19. I was engaged to be married, I think, at that time, thinking I'm ready to go. And my father allowed me to stand over his shoulder and see how the business was done. And I was a quick study of, how do I do this? And I actually
this was the business he owned.
Yeah, it started with my grandfather, then my dad. Okay. So it started in 1926. So
Second
it was
generation. What was the business?
It was fuel oil, heating oil, and air conditioning.
Got it. Yeah.
So they taught me when I was 16 how to install heaters, how to clean heaters, and I was just a young buck that could carry stuff and work with a journeyman. But I got to learn all the trades, which is a great skill I used through my whole life taking care of houses, because I can do electrical work, some wood work, some cement work, some air conditioning. I know enough to be dangerous to maintain things, but it was a great skill set to be in the union, working for my dad, driving an oil truck, doing all this work. And I got a lot of skills from that. But he saw and was counseled that I'm never going to learn to be a great businessman in his shadow. So I was into cars at the time, muscle cars. Yeah. My dad had the foresight to lend me the money, $50,000, to start an auto parts store. At 20 years old, I had my first business financed by my dad, but I opened up a retail store, called it Son's Auto Supply, because it was my dad's money and I didn't want anybody to know my name so I could dodge salespeople. But I started off hiring, 4 or 5 people and managing inventory and handling collections and credit and selling auto parts for a living. So that became me for the first few years of my life.
Was that the first time you really started managing people then, Bob?
Yes.
Yeah,
Other than
yeah.
in the fuel business, but basically
Sure.
I was the son of the boss. So,
Yeah,
it's
right,
like
right.
I felt that I was doing it, but certainly I was in my dad's shadow, and he was a few steps away to go say, what do I do about this guy that's not listening to me or whatever? So he counseled me and certainly taught me some things of, how to negotiate with the union and how to discipline people. But his culture was more of the control and command military structure running a
Okay.
business than
Right, right.
what it is today.
Well, you're president, CEO, and chairman of the board of American Asphalt. You've been there 34 years. So looking at my calculations, there was about 13 years there where you did a number of different things. It looks like it obviously worked for Dad for a bit, running this auto parts store, and before you actually purchased the assets of American Asphalt. Give me just kind of an overview of those 13 years. What if you had to kind of draw a line through the various activities that you had, what were some of the lessons you've learned and some of the things that perhaps you wished you hadn't have gone and done to help us, that are listening, as to kind of the things maybe to avoid down the line.
So after running the auto parts store for about 3 years, my father had a heart attack,
Hmm.
and they called me and said, basically, you got to come over here and run the
Wow.
family business. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was like cutting off my right arm because I felt
Can
the auto
imagine.
parts business was my business. I
Right.
created it and I lived
Sure.
it. I breathed it. And I'm like, well, I don't
It
want
was
to go.
profitable.
Yeah, I
You
don't.
was
Yeah,
profitable. It was doing well.
we were getting by, but
You're
sales.
earning a living.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sales were probably $500,000 a year, and the fuel oil business was probably doing $3 million a year. And
Yeah.
so, where do I belong? I belonged at the oil business. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went there and I sold the auto parts store.
Mm.
And the guy that bought it defaulted, so I had to take it back and
Mm.
resell it. That was a painful exercise.
Mm.
But
Mm.
during that 13 years of running the oil business, I'm a full of energy 22, 23,
Yeah.
24-year old. I went out and bought up some of our competitors, small
Oh.
operators that had one or two trucks that couldn't make ends meet, and folded them into my company. So I was able to expand the customer base, expand the fleet, expand the sales.
Mm.
So I learned a lot of lessons of doing deals and buying and selling businesses. And I to
Right.
this day,
Right.
I really enjoy that piece of it.
Yeah.
But I grew it too fast. So
Mm.
not having the sense or looking at what could go wrong, I only looked at what could go right. I didn't account for some things that could happen. And my dad trusted me and gave me enough rope to hang myself, basically.
Mm.
So I moved the business into a giant facility, spent $1 million on a building, $1 million on a 1 million-gallon asphalt or fuel oil storage tank, and a new computer back when you needed a computer room and the big dials were spinning and you had to have it air conditioned and climate controlled, but that was like $500,000. I spent way too much money, and then we had a warm winter. So my
Oh
sales
boy.
tanked because
Yeah.
nobody needed as much oil because it
Of
was warm
course.
out.
Yeah.
My bank came to me after the season and said, you got to raise
Ouch.
some capital or we're not going
Yeah.
to give you a line of credit. So I thought, all right, I'll take on a partner, and I soon found nobody with money is going to be a minority partner in a family business. They
Mm.
all want
Of course.
control. So
Yeah.
it quickly flipped to the only way out would be sell the business. So I eventually sold the family business,
Mm.
and unfortunately for me, and this is sort of the beginning of the awakening of the God story.
Mm.
I sold the business and we got enough money at settlement to pay off our debts. And
Yeah.
we took back a note, a 5-year note for what would be my father's investment in the company that I owned 100% of the stock. So basically, I was going to get the money and pay my dad back what I owed him for
Mm.
buying the business, and
Wow.
it would have worked out. Well, the guy negotiated 5 1-year equal payments. So he didn't have to make a payment until 1 year from the sale.
Mm.
And he hired me to be the president and run the company. And I found out within the first month he was a crook, and he expected
Oh
me to be a
goodness.
crook. So I walked out and said, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I
Right.
have some
Right.
moral turpitude. So
Yeah.
he'd never made the first payment. A year later,
Mm.
when it became obviously he was not going to pay us, my dad and myself were out of the business with no money,
Mm.
and like, what the heck do we do now?
Yeah.
So God brought me to my knees for sure. At that point, it's
Right.
like, what are you going to do? You've been stripped of power, you've been stripped of money, control, a job. You got nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and that was a big dilemma. So unbeknownst to me at that time, I thought I had a good idea. Didn't give God the credit. I went out to 20 people that I knew, family, friends, business associates that trusted me, and asked to borrow $10,000 from each of them. And I offered them 20% interest, because in the mid 80s, prime rate was like 18, 19%. So I offered them 20%, and I offered them a piece of the profits until I paid them back. So out of the 20 people I asked, 10 people said yes. So I had $100,000. 10 people with 10 grand apiece gave me an unsecured loan, and I took that to a bank with a business plan that I knew, and said, I want to buy an asphalt paving business. And I got 100 grand to put down, but I needed another 300 grand to make a down payment to buy the business. So the bank made a character loan. Once again, God in it. They don't even do that today.
No.
But they believed in me, said, we trust you. We'll give you the money. And I bought a bunch of junk that, once again, God in it. If I had known what I was buying, I never would have bought it. So the first day after settlement, the seller didn't want me to meet his people. He was afraid they would quit if he found out he was selling. So he introduced me as the new owner, and one guy quit on the spot, and there were only 4 employees. So I lost one on the spot.
You lost 25%.
Yeah, I lost. and these guys, the remaining employees, said, I hope you have a lot of money. And I started laughing. I said, I don't have any money. I don't even know how I'm going to make payroll this week. I didn't tell them that, but I had a $10,000 home equity line of credit. That was my slush fund to make payroll. And they said, I asked them why they were asking that. They said, you need a new asphalt plant. The asphalt plant you bought, which I thought had some substantial value, they said is totally worn out. It's rusted out. It barely runs. And I said, well, how much is a new asphalt plant? And they said, I don't know, a couple $1 million. And I went home and curled up in the fetal position. And what have I done? I borrowed from everybody that trusted me, and I borrowed from a bank, and I have a bunch of junk on my hands. I had no choice but to work hard every day, work through it, fix stuff at night, sell the jobs myself, work doing the jobs and making asphalt during the day. So I learned the business from the ground up, doing all the jobs. But certainly God provided for me, because it's a miracle I survived that. It's a miracle that the company grew year over year over year, that good people came up and were willing to work with me, and just people paid me. I had very little bad debt. That hard work paid off. And back then I thought it was me. Now I look back, I'm like, how did that happen? It was definitely God helping me, God steering me, that, now I realize what was going on. I didn't then.
Well, Bob, you and I are both members of the C12 Group, and I know you've been involved about 7 years down in Delaware. I have been a member up here about 3 years in Connecticut, and I'll tell you, for me, that was just such a seminal event, right? And finally realizing, that God does own my business. I'm just his steward, and, I need to just do the best I can, and he'll do the rest. Did you kind of come around to that when you got back in C12? Did it happen before, or join C12, or did it happen before that?
Once I got to the size that I could spend some time on executive training and get my hands, that I didn't have to be dirty every day and wear work boots and coveralls, I could actually sit
fixing that asphalt plant. Right.
So it took time to grow to that, but I did grow, and I joined Vistage, which is a nationwide CEO group.
Secular.
Right. And what I learned after doing that for 8 years is most people came when they had a problem. They didn't come when the things were good and I needed help. So I went to a meeting where I needed help, and there was only 3 or 4 people out of 12 that showed up, and I'm like, this isn't really good. And C12 happened to solicit me for membership just at that time, and I said, perfect. I felt, is this God calling me? So I tried it out. I did both for a month, and as soon as I went to the C12 group, this was 2013, I felt that these are people that care. It was a smaller group, but these are people that are aligned in thought, care about each other. I belong here. I don't belong in Vistage. So I dropped out of Vistage, and C12 has been a significant part of my life for the last 8 years. And it's not just the lesson plans. It's the camaraderie. It's the network of friends that help me carry the load, that I feel good when I can help others to avoid mistakes. And it's remarkable to me that there was a female hairdresser that owned 2 hairdressing shops in my group. And when she came in, I'm thinking, what could this person possibly possibly
Ever
help me
teach
with
me.
as a construction company. Like,
Right.
but you know what? One meeting, I was having a personnel problem, and she came out with a nugget of wisdom that put me on my
Wow.
heels. I'm like, oh my,
Wow.
where did that come from?
That's great.
It was just amazing. So to me, I don't want anybody to ever be short-sighted that look at the group and think that they're not compatible or they're not helpful. That is so far from the truth. They're people and they care, and everybody comes, and God speaks to us through different people in different
Yes, it
ways.
does.
And if
It
you're
is.
open to that, it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago when we first met. And, I refer to C12 as kind of my non-executive board of directors.
Definitely.
They're
Yes.
going to be honest. They're going to be transparent. They're going to tell me things I don't like to hear and make me feel uncomfortable. But I know where their heart is. And I've found the same thing. I think when the content's great, but one of the things I enjoy is the forum afterwards where we throw up ideas and help each other. And for those of our listeners who don't know C12, Group C12 has been around, about 20, 25 years, Bob, I think. And Buck Starbuck Jacobs started that about that time. We've got Mike Sharrow as our CEO for the last few years, and I think we're up to about almost 2,500, 3,000 members now.
I think Buck started it in Florida, and
right.
It sort of grew up the East Coast. So it took a while for them to get a group, and it was a combined group between Delaware and New Jersey to have enough nucleus that I joined, and we met in Delaware. So for the first couple of years, I was driving a half an hour south to Delaware to be in a group. Now we've split off, and we have a group based in South Jersey, so we have enough members, and it's growing. So, but
great.
I would give C12 the credit of one of the first things they did. They have a table when you went into the meeting with some support books and
materials,
pamphlets and things. One of the books was The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. I took that book, and it seemed so simple to me that, hey, answer these 6 questions about how to get your business line. I'm like, oh, this is fine. I'll do the book and check it off and be done that. And the first question is, why do you exist? And I'll tell you, that knocked me like a punch in the chest. And I had to look in the mirror. I'm like, I don't know why we exist. How can I expect any of my people to understand why we exist? I don't know. So we spent the next 6 months. I bought a copy for each one on my management team, and it forced me to go from an entrepreneurial style of management in my company where I'm the end-all, be-all, answer-all, to a professionally grouped, the delegated. We had to get naked in front of each other and heal the wounds. I thought we all got along. I honestly felt my management team was all aligned. And when we got into the book and sat around the table, I was amazed that people had hurt feelings, had insulted each other, disrespected each other in thought, word, and deed. That all had to be healed. So the book says you got to get naked, and that was the truth. And I don't like conflict, so it was very uncomfortable for me. But it was a great exercise to get all that out, fix it, and then we all agreed on why we exist and how we're going to behave. It turned into core values that we still use to this day. So my company was so far changed by God, taking me to C12, leading me to The Advantage, changing the company to a professionally managed company. And we just culminated that by doing an ESOP and selling half the business to my employees 2 years ago.
Wow,
so
that's great.
and to me, what a plan of God to share the wealth, to reward people that don't have any way to have a safe retirement, and give them shares in a successful company over time, that they should all be getting checks in the 6 figures when they retire. And I'm talking about a group of 100 and some people. That's a miracle. How could these people ever have a benefit? And it's good for me. I'm secure. It's tax benefit wise, but I never would have known anything if I hadn't joined C12, I hadn't seen The Advantage, if I hadn't gone through the exercise, I hadn't found how God was speaking to me and protecting me from myself. It's been a wonderful ride.
That's terrific. Well, and let's just do a quick thumbnail on that 35 years. So 4 employees and then 3. And then you're up to 170 today. Was that the figure that's in total? And your market area is pretty much Jersey, Delaware. Where are you currently operating? Because asphalt business, you can't go that far. Right? You've got
there's a 25-mile radius or so from our 2 asphalt manufacturing facilities. So that gives us pretty much a South Jersey presence. We occasionally go into Pennsylvania, and we're currently negotiating to maybe have a branch office in Southeast PA. And in May of this year, we bought a company in North Jersey in Scotch Plains that does asphalt maintenance work. So I have an office in Scotch Plains. We have a crew of 6 people and a manager on site. So we're spreading out, and that mergers and acquisitions training of buying little oil companies when I was 24. I'm up to about 36 companies I bought or sold over my lifetime. So I love the art of the deal. I love putting stuff together that's a win-win. And that right now is really, there's an awful lot of fruit on the tree. There's 3 or 4 opportunities we have to continue to grow and add other companies into our organization.
That's awesome. So how many companies have you actually purchased during that 35-year period?
I'm going to say probably 25. There's probably 25 buys and 10 sells. So I bought a mill writing company that did steel work, and I have a traffic control company that rented and sold all the traffic control devices. I bought a marine electronic company that did radar, sonar, and stuff on boats. That was a big mistake. I lost a lot of money because I trusted people, and I quickly learned again. It's when God calls us to love each other and to trust people, and you got to be careful with that, because I trusted and loved on people that had other ideas about stealing from me, and it just, I had to shut down a business, and that was a very painful thing to admit failure, that there was no way I could run it remotely. There was no way I could bring in people that could change that culture. So not every decision I made was a good one, but at least the losses were small in comparison to the ones I did that have been very good.
God gives us a little bit of slack. Oh, yeah. Right?
he continues to train us. It's like you don't know it all. You think you know it all.
Let you go out a little bit. Yeah, we'll reel you back in when you got a little bit too far. How many of those companies were under the American Asphalt umbrella? Were there also companies you purchased in that, or was that built more as a separate entity?
I'd say there's probably 5 other paving companies that I've absorbed, and the driver for me was to get the talent. So to take a entrepreneur-run business with 5, 10, 15 guys, the owner is selling the jobs, working on the machinery at night, operating the machinery or doing something, with his hands all day. And you can do that for a period of time, but you can't be sick. You can't take a vacation. It's a heck of a life. So my appeal to them is stop doing that and come and join my team. We're a family atmosphere. We'll reward you monetarily better than you can earn on your own. But I really need that crew. You can't find people today. So if I can onboard the crew, take their machinery, blend it in, or sell it, and we already have the sales down. We know how to sell the product. I just need people to do it. So that's been very successful, to take smaller companies, and the owners come in. They understand what it takes to run a business, so they make great managers, management, estimators. They understand it all. So some of my key people have been entrepreneurs that came and joined my company.
Well, one of the biggest challenges, and you've read about this in business books, and I've certainly seen it in my work, M&A acquisition success is kind of about 50-50. In fact, in some industries, it's a lot lower than that. And one of the key challenges is, how do you integrate new people into an existing company culture? So Bob, how do you do that? Because obviously you bought some of these guys, they had their own values, their own direction, they were the entrepreneurs running the show, and all of a sudden now they're working for you, and their people are working for you. How do you kind of get that culture across? How do they enculturate them into American Asphalt?
Well, my first approach would be to the seller, to try to meet with them and understand what it is they want. Because I only want to do a win-win deal. I don't want to just beat them up and get a great price and have it. That's a short trip.
Because you want to keep them. You want to keep the people.
And I want them to be happy with the deal, not feeling bad about it. So once I can understand what's driving them, is it time off? Is it money? Is it security? Is it what they're doing, or whatever's going on in their life? Then I look at if I can figure that out and the numbers work and I can put something in front of them that makes sense, the next step is there a cultural alignment? We're an open shop company. If they're a union environment, that is not going to mix. That is not how we run our business. So that's almost an undoable thing. I can't do it. It would expose me on the other side, that they would unionize my company. And I would prefer not that to happen. So the cultural alignment is the key to the whole deal. If there are people don't want to come. And I did buy one paving company in probably 25 miles north of here, and it was a owner and his wife running the company, and they had a crew of about 8 people. At the end of the dance, the owner and his wife came to work for me. None of the 8 people came.
Really?
They all said they were, number one, they were aging out. They were, in their 60s. It's like, if I ever thought a time to stop, this would be the time, because I don't want to drive to a different company and drive a different truck and do a different thing. So I did was I got a bunch of equipment, which I could have bought anywhere. I didn't get any people, and it blew up in my face. So once again, I was taught, the school of hard knocks of God showing me what not to do. So since then, I've had other opportunities very similar that I'm leery of that I want to make sure that I can talk to the people and can I improve their life? Are my benefits and pay structure and culture and environment better than what they have? If so, they're going to come and they're going to be happy. If the cultures don't align and they expect more money or more benefits than we're giving, I can't
walk away.
Yeah, I can't handle it. I got 170 people that are happy with it. I can't ruin that pot for 10 or 15 new people. So it's challenging, but it's doable.
And it's very simple, right? You have to ask the kind of questions that to get to that cultural alignment. Well, you've obviously hired a lot of people too organically as you've grown. What do you look for, Bob, when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
How they have faith in themselves, how they treat others. And, great questions in an interview is when I ask them, tell me about a time they've helped somebody else. Not themselves. It's very telling. If they can't come up with anything, that sort of leads me to where they're at. Now maybe they need to mature into it, but people that have lied to their banker and gotten in financial trouble or something, like that's business 101. You can't lie to your banker; they're your partner. You need to be open and honest. But that whole culture is how I find people that if they're willing to realize they're not perfect, if they're willing to continue to grow, if they say they're a servant leader and that I can bear that out with some proof that they really are a servant leader. It's easy to say, not so easy to do. Then I feel like, all right, now we have a chance. And it doesn't start once they come here. We support them with outsourced training, mentoring, coaching. We have our own leadership academy in the company that we run middle management through to give them more skills. And if we have somebody that we see great skills in, we hook them up with one of our outside vendors that'll meet with them once a month for 2 hours and teach them time management and people skills and try to bring them along so they can become more mature as a leader.
Yeah. Now, you're a man of faith, obviously, member of C12, been involved in church your whole life. When people find out about American Asphalt, is it clear to them that it's a faith-based owned company at least, or do you wear that on your sleeve? How do you kind of manage that with the public, particularly not just with people that you hire, but also with your customers?
There was some trepidation when we first started putting it out there. So I stepped softly. I was a little nervous. My lawyers made me nervous, saying, Bob, you can't pray in a company meeting. I'm like, but I want to pray. And they're like, you'll get sued. And through C12, again, I found the Alliance Defending Freedom out in California, free legal advice that looked at my handbook, looked at my values, looked at my mission statement that had God in it. And I was challenged by the federal government. There was a EEOC claim against me that we were prejudiced against a minority, which wasn't true, but that was the allegation. They looked at my website and they looked at my mission statement that has God in it. And they called me and said, we have a problem with that. I'm like, wait a minute, you're the government. So the Alliance Defending Freedom gave me great advice that, that can be the mission statement as long as it's my mission statement. I can't impose that on other people, but it's the owner's mission statement. So I'm perfectly okay to say it. But now we fly the Christian flag over all our facilities. We send out the John Gospel little tracts with our checks when we pay bills, or we send them out with bills to customers. So we're spreading the word that way. We give out free Bibles in our lobby, and I just put 3 Bibles at a time out in the lobby, and they cost like $3 or $4 on Amazon. And every week I walk through the lobby and they're gone. And I just put another 3 out, and they're not, and it says take one free. And what's amazing to me, a customer came one day and he took a Bible as he left, and he sent me an email the following day. He says, "You got me in trouble." I'm like, "What did I do?" He says, "I came home and my wife says, 'Where's my Bible? Why'd you get one and I didn't get one?'" I'm like, I never would have thought
What's your
that.
address?
And I mailed him another Bible. I'm like, I'll be happy to send you a Bible. But just
Bob,
the little things that you do, we
never know.
Yeah, we started a caring committee inside the company that's Christian based, that they're funded to help our people and take the management out of it, so coworkers can decide who's going to get $500 or $1,000 when they have a roof leak or a car repair or a medical issue, something where they need a little help. That we look at it. It's a family culture, faith based. That's what we do it. So now it's on our website.
Awesome.
If anybody looks at our website, they're going to see we have Christian values, my Christian statements on there. We make no bones about it. And I've had Jewish customers call me and tell me, Bob, I know where you stand man. I like dealing with a guy who stands up for what he believes in.
Yeah.
I have no problem at all with that. And I thought we might alienate some people.
Right,
It's been the exact opposite. And instead, God has driven employees and customers to us that are aligned with our culture. And what better could it be is to deal with somebody else that thinks like we think. So applicants have come in here and said, I'm looking for a job, and I've been looking for something that would be aligned with my faith. And it was such a relief to see your company's a Christian-run company. I want to work here.
Fantastic.
So I've been rewarded for putting the faith out there.
That's awesome. Well, Bob, the time has just flown by, but we do have a couple of last questions and kind of go back to where we started. There's lots of speculation about what, work in the world looks like in a post-COVID world. If we even get there, who knows what's going to bring this fall. It sounds like you've had a terrific year, and I'm grateful for that, and we have to be grateful for our Father for that. But what changes do you see ahead? Are things that are going to, be a lasting impact to your business? I mean, you're considered essential. You have to do work, obviously, outside for the most part, but what kind of speculation and change do you see ahead for us?
I have faith in God that He is in charge, and I try not to worry. They say if you worry, you don't have faith. So you gotta stop worrying. So I try to hope, and I believe the last election, God was in it, and the election and the politics of our country change what's going to be spent on roads and transportation dollars and taxes. All that has an implication on the business environment. And if new homes sell, that we're building roads for home builders, that's a good thing. If taxes change and people can't afford a home, that changes the structure. So I have full faith that God is in charge. He's pulling the strings. Things are going to work out. We have the best country in the world, even though we're all infighting. I'm waiting for God to sort of put his hand on the shoulder of somebody as a leader and to encourage us to get along as a country again. So business has confidence, and people that are buying things have confidence, and we'll work our way out of anything that's thrown at us.
Great attitude. Lastly, what career and life advice would you give to someone who maybe has their eyes on the corner office themselves, or perhaps wants to be an entrepreneur and buy a business and start from scratch pretty much and build it out on their own?
Have faith in themselves, that you really need to have confidence. You have to be willing to sacrifice, and sacrifice may be time with family and other things. So it's a commitment to make it. It doesn't always go your way, and I can tell them plenty of stories of failure. So anybody can do it. You just have to be willing to do it. The money's available. If you're inventive, I prove that you can buy a business with no money. It can be done. And I've spoken to some college students about how to do that. It's encouraging to me that the entrepreneurship, if you have the drive and you care about people, so people will stay with you and help you along the way, it's a great thing. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah. Well, Bob Brown, Chairman, President, and CEO of the American Asphalt Company, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.